Welcome. This is David Boles, Human Meme. Today's topic, as Alfonso drinks his urine. I usually don't do subtitles here on your favorite Human Meme podcast. But if I were to write a subtitle today, it would read this: When you pay horrible people to teach you. All together now. As Alfonso drinks his urine, when you pay horrible people to teach you. Now that title and subtitle are together more universal and not as dismissive, but also not quite as effective as just the one image of Alfonso opening his mouth to fill his own vessel with the swill of all his poisoned, golden goodness. So, no subtitle. When I moved from the middling Midwest to find my purpose and reason for being on the East Coast of the United States of America, I had no idea I would be paying thousands of dollars in tuition as an East Coast Ivy League graduate student in the School of Arts, and that I would be paying all that money to hear a semi-professional playwriting instructor tell us on the first day of class in our first semester that he would, quote, rather drink his own urine than teach us, end quote. Well, the us of us were all aghast and wounded. We knew previously a little bit about Alfonso's reputation in the classroom. Oh, and Alfonso is not his real name. Name changed to protect the unsanitary. And Alfonso was nasty by design and cruel by nature. And Alfonso was rather large and bitterly unhappy. And some former students compared him to the original Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars, because he was big, mean, and sweaty. And Alfonso dressed the part to fit the part, wearing neon green sweaters year-round that also made his tiny head and massive midline look like a giant, unripened pear as he waddled down the corridors of our ivory tower. Now, if Alfonso had stood up in our class and instead said that he would rather eat his own feces than teach us, well now, that would have been something. Something worth paying to see. So on that day, Alfonso set the tone with his urine for the entire semester, all in that cowardly moment of yellow pleasing. And he played hard favorites and heavy hatreds. And we all sort of knew that too. And so those of us he hated would sit together, and sometimes we'd sit apart. And every new weekly playwriting session he'd wave his hand mysteriously in our general direction and say, I feel some hostility in this area. And we'd all internally laugh because Alfonso was being serious and paranoid, and we were controlling all of his insecurities by deciding the when and the how of where we sat together. And you may know, graduate school is sometimes, oftentimes, more about mind games and gamesmanship than it is about learning anything. So you do your time, you take your abuse, and then you get out. And yes, it was pretty clear Alfonso hated me and all the other straight men in our particular class. And I've always wondered if that was by default, design, purpose, or just paranoia. Who knows? And nobody cares now, and we really didn't care back then much either. Except when it came to the urine drinking threat. But if you happen to be gay, or a lesbian, or whatever, then you were Alfonso's class favorite, and you were invited to go out and eat at the local Hungarian restaurant with him, and he paid. I never tried and did not receive the coveted invitation to go out to eat because I really didn't care. But some of the other guys in class wanted to be included. And when they self-invited themselves to dinner, the dinner would be canceled on the spot, or moved to another location, like the local falafel house, all without notice. And if you were liked by the department chair, then Alfonso especially hated you. And I took that hatred by default as a quiet badge of honor, because I loved our department chair. And the larger question eventually became, as it always does, in the longest run, did we want the department chair to be our master, or did we want to vow our loyalty to a codified urine drinker who looked like a giant pear? Oh, and we did hear the pity stories about Alfonso. One Broadway hit, nothing else after. But is that enough to want to drink your own golden shower? And Alfonso spent all the money he made flying his friends around on a jet to eat faraway dinners in far-off places, only to end up working at a record store in the village, growling and unhappy and seeking for revenge and looking for the opportunity. And he wanted any chance to unzip his pants and drink from his own miserable fountain of ochre dismay. And when we, the undersigned, complained about the whole peeing meme that took over our graduate playwriting class, we later heard reports of a big row between the department chair and former mentor to Alfonso, the mentee. And Alfonso was not invited back to teach after years of plying his own station. So we had the mark of destiny about us, that we were not there merely to be the arrows slung against Alfonso's dark and bitter sky. And we resolutely understood that Alfonso alone owned the demons and the failures of his life, and blaming us, by proxy or default, for his unhappiness was the epitome of a thankless child and a graceless clod. Now, some of us were tempted to offer Alfonso our urine to drink, but he probably would have loved that a little too much because that meant he won us over to his dark side. It's much better now to flush away Alfonso forever from afar with an entirely new sort of perspective and humanization in the ongoing recording of his sins against us and a memorization of what happened to us. And we now share a sacred oath that none of us who suffered under Alfonso shall ever let that sort of abuse happen again to anyone, anywhere, because the scent of our dismay is lingering and still acidic and combustible. Thank you for listening. Be a human meme.